Quick disclaimer at the front here, DIY is a game that my company, Speedrobo Games, is assisting with manufacturing. So I am a little bit biased during this interview, and just wanted to let you know that I am involved with the manufacturing of DIY. So with that out of the way, enjoy the interview. Hey there, card folk. Speed Robo here, and welcome to a special episode of Exploring Card Game Design. This is going to be the first of our interview series, sub-series within the series of Exploring Card Game Design. I'm hoping to do a lot more of these as we go through. Today we are interviewing the developer, the head developer and creative mind behind Duels in Ysnea. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey there. Yeah, I'm Jacob. I'm a co-lead developer for Duels in Ysnea from Studio Articulate. Big Speedrobo fan. Uh, Watching their videos for I think about a year now.
Thank you. That's high praise, and it's duels in. Um,
Duels
I
in Ysnea.
Ysnea. I'm sorry, I
Everyone says it wrong. It's
mispronounced it.
cool.
I always want to throw an
That's
extra
fine.
I in there because I'm a fancy French and Englishman.
Yeah, no. The you look at the word. It's got letters.
It
It's
should.
it's it's who knows how that's pronounced. DIY is what the game's called in the streets.
Yup.
The violent streets of Rochester.
The violent streets of central Illinois cornfields. We don't have streets here. It's just cornfields.
Yeah.
Um, so to get this interview started, let's give me a quick overview of your game. What genre does this fall into? I see that we've got counters, cards, and tokens. So would you say this is a card game?
It's probably closer to a board game than a card game if you want to split hairs about it. It's a hidden information game. Um, there is a deck building aspect to the game. Um, in a full competitive match, players bring a group of 16 cards that they can draft down what they're using in the game. The cards themselves aren't drawn from anything, though. They're just representations of the actions you can take. Each card's effectively a list of actions you can take in a round of the game.
Gotcha. So a good way to think about this would be Flesh and Blood without the shuffled deck. So it's like it would be like Flesh and Blood, where you just brought your equipment loadout, and then instead of playing cards that did things, you would play out these different action tokens to indicate which ability on your items you are using. Would that be a good way to think of it?
Yep, that would be pretty much exactly how the game is played. Yep.
Nice. I really
Um,
like that. So, as many people know, I'm a big fan of games that have deck building and customizable elements, but rely primarily on skill rather than luck. Zatchbell, the card battle, is a really good example of this. And to me, this game has a lot of undertones of that, where you bring your setup and your loadout, and yet there's still hidden information from the opponent, and it's how you can read your opponent and their upcoming moves and how you make best of the tools you brought to the table.
yeah. I take comparing it to Zatch Bell is very high praise, especially coming from you,
Yes.
knowing your opinions on Zatch Bell.
Yep. I always appreciate a game like that. So, what made you want to go in this direction for your game?
Um, so the game has had three three versions, I guess, across its lifespan. It's existed in sort of three disparate forms. Um, I am a big fan of designing games that don't have a lot of random elements, or at least don't have random elements that impact the game too much. I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan, big card game fan, love sort of strategizing and carrying ideas. Don't like rolling dice and don't like card draw because of the sort of elements to it. And I don't think that they're bad necessarily,
Right.
as much as just a point of personal preference. But trying to make a strategy game that had elements that I liked without too many random elements is sort of why I've built it this way. Um, a lot of the game's identity comes from I mentioned sort of three different versions. The first version of it, back when I was applying to be a game design student, I actually needed some things for my portfolio, and so I designed the very bare bones pre-alpha version of this game, I guess, as a Dark Souls board game.
Okay.
Um,
There's an actual
and
Dark Souls board game coming out. I just saw that in Game Trade magazine, and for my game store, I actually cut out the just the "You Died" section of the poster and taped it to the inside of our bathroom door.
yeah, it's the new Elden Ring game from Steam Forged Games, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, is it Elden Ring and not Dark Souls? Did I completely botch that?
Yeah, it's Elden Ring by Steam Forged Games.
Oh my
They're
goodness. It has the
releasing
you.
another.
It has the "You Died" in it though.
Yeah, well, you die in Elden Ring.
Oh, and it has the like Dark Souls "You Died" message. Am I just that under a rock?
Well, Elden Ring is the spiritual successor to Dark Souls.
Oh, I see. Well, sorry, total tangent. You mentioned Dark Souls, and my brain went on a total thing. So this started out as like a fan made Dark Souls board game for your
Yes.
game design portfolio.
Yeah, so it started out as me taking the elements of Dark Souls 2 PvP and trying to make a board game out of it, trying to turn that into a playable thing. And so the very first version of this game uh, had literal one-to-one Dark Souls equipment turned into cards. And instead of action tokens, you had a deck of action cards
Oh,
that were tied to the equipment you had. Uh,
oh,
and
that
that was a
sounds
much older version of the game.
that sounds truly awful.
No, it was fun.
No,
Um,
I bet it was fun. But as soon as you said, "Oh, you had a deck of action cards that were tied to each equipment," immediately my brain goes to the personal nightmare of mine of like having all of my equipment with their own action deck tied to it, and then needing to shuffle each item's action deck together to form the main deck. And all I could think of in the core of my brain was, when you play Smash Up, and then you have to like
yeah,
de-shuffle everything.
yeah. Oh, so yeah. Luckily, we didn't have that issue because I am someone who's played a lot of Smash Up, and when I designed it, um, very similar to action tokens, where the tokens represent what's on the cards.
Right.
Your action deck was a singular deck, and they corresponded to what was on your equipment cards.
Oh, I see. So you didn't
Yeah,
shuffle them together. They were kept separate.
yeah, yeah. Or
Okay.
well, you
Okay.
had one central deck that had like action references that did different things depending on what equipment you had.
Oh, that is
Uh,
interesting.
uh, it had the RNG element, which I wasn't too big a fan of, and I ended up scrapping as we moved into the second sort of version of the game. Um, but the biggest issue it had was just you'll notice in front of you you have your tokens. Those are 24 tokens in front of you. That's like a pretty spread, balanced way to keep track of the actions.
Right.
When it was in the form of a deck, it was so unwieldy to try to make so that you had consistent like access to the actions you needed to take.
That makes sense.
Um, it was fun. It was good. It was much more Dark Souls than this is at the moment, both thematically and gameplay wise. Um, the biggest difference in I guess design philosophy when building things out there was uh, that was really just a representation one to one of me like what does this item in Dark Souls do, and then making it do that mechanically in the rules I'd written. Whereas designing cards here, I had a lot more freedom to be like, okay, what do we mechanically need to make this encounter interesting,
Right.
and building things around.
Yeah. And as a game designer myself, going I think both is fun in their own right. I enjoy trying to translate things into another like game system, if that makes sense. Like one thing that I've been enjoying recently is I'm working on a project that takes cards from one game and like sort of translates them into another. And that's been a lot
Yeah,
of fun to do to figure out. Okay, so if this card worked this way in this game, what would be an equivalent mechanic, right? And I enjoy that personally. But it's also nice to have the freedom to say, okay, we need something that does this here to fill this gap. I'm just going to make that.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to sort of the triangle of game design with simulation, storytelling, and gameplay as sort of the 3 points on that triangle. It's not really a matter of the one being right or wrong. It's a matter of what feel you're trying to invoke in the game. And so we sort of moved on to the second version of the game when I started working with other people on the project. Started working with my co-lead Cole.
Yeah,
Um, Really, the goal when removing the RNG was to move it much more to be focused on game gameplay, and so
right.
the simulation aspect was a lot less important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, can you tell me about the storytelling aspect of your game?
Yeah, so this game definitely leads in the triangle a lot more towards gameplay. But this game was almost entirely built out of an independent study that happened when I was in college. Me and a group of friends effectively created a world in a world building independent study and started making like pieces of media out of that.
That's awesome.
And uh, I'm a big game nerd. I love games. I was like, what if we take this old Dark Souls board game that I've been playing around with in my head, and we find a way to transpose it into this world we've created. Uh, and so, a big thing when designing this was creating a really solid, fun 1v1 sort of experience that emulated what fighting games or Dark Souls PvP felt like in a fair and balanced way. And another moment of that was sort of capturing the flavor of the world we had created and figuring out a way to get people interacting with that world. And so we designed the sort of base system of the game, and then we built a campaign mode as a way to sort of play with a group of your friends because the main mode of the game is 1v1. When you're playing the game, you're playing against one person. And so something we want to do was find a way to include more players. And so we have effectively campaigns where you're playing multiple rounds of this and building up a legacy, sort of like a legacy game.
Uh, campaign mode. Can you so like that's could you play the campaign mode even single player?
Probably not. So how the campaign works, if we reach the goal on our Kickstarter, is you get a group of friends together, um, and we have rules about some starting things. You get votes as a resource, and some cards that you start off with, depending on the setup you do. And then each player effectively plays matches against each other, a few match each time you'd sit down and play, like in a week or two or whatnot. And winning matches gets you votes. And each time you sit down and play the great game with a group of friends, there's a different sort of issue or thing happening in the story of the world. And at the end of everyone sitting down and playing, you get to put forward your votes to determine where the story goes. And that affects what cards and what equipment people have access to in the grand scheme of things.
That is genuinely so cool, and I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that in a game.
Um, I've definitely played things that are similar to that. There are a lot of leagues that try to find like 1v1 experiences and make it a group experience. The Game of Thrones limited card game actually did something very similar. Uh, Game stores would have huge maps of like the setting, and you would pledge allegiance to one of the houses in the setting, and
Right.
every win you got would get you flags to conquer territory. And there was this whole big thing, and you'd win prizes at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with like game stores having leagues that are kind of similar. I'm saying I've never seen anything quite like it that's meant to be like a player driven thing. It's normally like a organized play driven thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely think if a game store wanted to, they could host a league of the game
Oh, for
using the
sure.
campaign mode effectively. But it's really designed for a group of like 4 to 8 players,
Hmm.
and just a way to for people who enjoy playing the game to get a bunch of matches in with their friends with something in the background happening.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the topic of game stores, First of all, yeah, a game store could absolutely run a league based on this campaign thing. I think that would be a great idea. But since we're talking about it, a big thing that I've been thinking about recently is the business models that games sell themselves on, and how to sell games. So, can you tell me a bit about how you're selling the game? And this is all information that is available on the Kickstarter. The link is down in the description. But I give me the breakdown on how you're selling the game and why you went that route.
Yeah, so the game is just a singular package, very similar to like a limited card game or something like that. You buy a box of the game, and it has all of the cards, it has all the tokens and the mats, or sorry, the singular mat in order to play the game. Um, and the reason for that is really just wanting to sell a whole experience. The goal isn't, to have a card game where you're buying booster packs and chasing anything. It's really just here is the game, here is the content, enjoy it. That's mostly because that's how I enjoy buying things. I like the model of just having everything accessible and everything available to me.
Yeah,
And I imagine most people buying the game want that. There are multiple copies of some of the general cards. So each faction has cards that are specific to the faction, but there are some cards that can be played by any faction. I believe there's one copy of each faction card and four copies of each non-faction card. That way, if you're setting up a campaign, you can have one player from each faction reasonably with one copy of the game. And if you want multiple people playing the same faction, you might need multiple copies, but theoretically, you could run the campaign with just one box.
for sure. Would we ever need more than one copy of any card?
If more than one person wants to use the card, is the only reason why.
Cool.
There's no reason for an individual player to run multiple copies of a card in their list. But say you have two people playing the Betwixt faction, which is what you have set up on your side of the board here. Like Pitchfork is a really good card that's used in a lot of Betwixt lists. And so if you had two players, they might both want to run a copy of that. And so having two copies of the card would be preferable.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. How many factions are in the base game?
There are six factions. We originally had more. We cut them out because of dev time.
Totally. I
There's
listen. Welcome to game development. It doesn't matter what that like, and this is something that a lot of people who aren't super versed in game development will be like, "Oh, they cut content, right?" And it's just that's always how it goes. I mean, heck, I was even watching an interview with a former Rare developer who said, "Well, basically every game we've ever made, we start big and then we have to trim down as we go." And as a game developer myself, yeah, that's pretty much been my experience as well. But six factions in the base game, that sounds like a lot. How many cards does each faction have?
um, I don't have the breakdown in front of me. I think it's like 11 equipment and then three accessories,
Yeah,
four faction cards. I think six items. I think it adds up to about 24 cards in a faction.
that makes sense.
Uh,
Will those?
and then
Oh no, go ahead.
so go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead.
And then
You finish your thought.
there's about 30 some odd general cards that can be used by any faction.
Cool. Well, I mean, now that we're getting into like the nitty gritty questions, I'm constantly just like there's another one that pops into my head and pops into my head. I just want to ask it immediately. Will the cut factions be released in the future?
So there is a lot of content that we have planned for this. The biggest limiting factor is time and money.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It always
this
is.
is, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a limiting factor for me. A lot of time and money has gone into this with like no return at all. We have content, we have things that we can make, we have ways to expand the game without even necessarily expanding, like adding in more keywords or making stronger keywords. We have a lot of plans for just more of what we currently have within the game and sort of looking at it and setting things up with slightly different things. And then we have ideas for like big ways to change the game in the future. and whether or not any of that exists sort of depends on, you know, whether or not we have players who are interested in that.
Absolutely.
If we get the Kickstarter going, we get people supporting it and interested. We can keep like releasing things. We have more. Uh, Biggest thing that I personally want to work on next um, is a game mode in which multiple players can sort of fight against one player. It's like a 3v1 asymmetrical mode,
Oh, that
um,
sounds fun.
uh, or 2v2. So expanding it past just the simple 1v1 mode and finding more ways to get a bigger play group invested in playing together all at once. And we have beta rules for all of those and have been play testing that privately. Um, but the sort of finishing that out would take money and time, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. We haven't gotten too into the nitty gritty um, of the gameplay during this interview, but I believe we are almost out of time, and we have a few Duels in Ysnea cards to cover. So, my last few questions are: if players want to learn the game and even try it out right now, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, so in our Kickstarter, we have a how to play video, which is short and does not cover the rules in great depth, but it should give you enough to hop into a game. Inside our tabletop simulator mod, we have a full PDF of the rulebook and reference cards. We have a Discord that I am constantly hawking in and waiting for people to join to show them demo games. We have a tabletop sim mod, and if we have interest in it, we're thinking about putting out a print and play version of the demo so that people can print it out and play it with their friends if that's preferred over tabletop sim.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, I love seeing print to play stuff, and one thing that I personally enjoy is when I back a Kickstarter, immediately getting access to the print and play, um, and getting a shot early. And I love seeing tabletop simulator modules for games like tabletop simulator modules just like this for games that are still in development, because it's a really cool snapshot into the game even before it's released. Um,
Yeah.
not to talk about too many other games during this interview. There was a TCG that one of my buddies got into recently back at the Kickstarter. It's called Cryptic. It plays exactly like Duel Masters. If you've played Duel Masters, you've played Cryptic. And we were the two of us. We were playing on the print and play at his store before it came out. And so like it makes me really happy to know that I can do the same thing with this tabletop simulator module right now.
Yeah. And I mean, as soon as the Kickstarter is over, if it's successful, we're going to have a print and play of the full game available for all of our backers.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited for that. While the game's still getting manufactured, love being able to jump in and play immediately. Um,
Yeah, no, we're super excited for people to play it and give us feedback.
yeah. So I will say, as someone who talking about the learning this game, as I've played this before, and I would like to assure all of my viewers that this game gets the Speedrobo seal of approval, and it is very easy to learn. If you have like the cards themselves can be a little bit complicated with the keywords. There can be a little bit of words to learn and some upfront information that you're going to have to sort of dig through. But the core rules themselves are incredibly simple. You get your left hand, your right hand, and your item. And then right here you've got left hand light, left hand heavy, right hand light, right hand heavy, and I don't remember. I don't. Can you tell me what these tokens do?
Yeah, so use item
Yep.
uses your item.
Use item.
You only have one of those tokens, and so you can only do that once in a round. That's a limiting factor. F is faction token. That's for faction abilities.
That's right here.
The demo game doesn't have faction abilities or actives. They have passives. Just sorry, I have a dog. That's
Oh,
that's getting
it's
a little
okay. I
antsy.
have a cat who just decided to make a huge bunch of noise. It's all good.
Oh, good. Sorry. Yeah, we actually just spoiled a card yesterday on our Kickstarter. One of the faction abilities for one of the Betwixt faction cards that is super popular in playtesting.
That's
And this
fantastic.
SC is stance change. You'll notice a bunch of cards say
Yes.
two-handed on them. That
Right.
lets you swap into using the two-handed version of a card.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. I remember this. It's all coming back to me. Man, this game's I haven't played it in a minute, but this game's really cool. I love these big cards where you can just be like, boom, now it's both of my hands. Get out of here.
Yep.
That's really cool. I like that. That's yep. That I remember it all. And so basically you just each player plays out their tokens and you reveal them one at a time and resolve the effects. It's very like intuitive to learn. Where you're gonna have to really like get into the rules and dig it out is, as you can see, to the people, I'm pulling up the card here with the hand ballista. There's a lot of words. Uh,
Yeah. We've been working a lot on making them more readable and easier to parse what things do.
mm.
Um, it used to be way worse. Now cards have reference on them. They
Yeah.
have things divided in more obvious ways.
Yep.
And there's still room for us to improve it more. If you play the game and have issues, let us know because we can
Absolutely.
go through and we can fix this all for production if we have people telling
Oh,
us things.
oh, for sure. And another thing I will say is that Jacob is fantastic at taking criticism. I whenever people show me games and ask me to review them, uh, I can be a little bit harsh, and I remember being kind of harsh on the wordings where I was just like, this is a lot, and these are way better than what I saw initially. So good job. You've basically
Yeah.
solved that issue.
The goal is to make the game as fun as possible. The goal is not to keep the first thing and pretend it's perfect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, welcome to game development. I mean, heck, my games, a lot of the games that I make are done print to order, and like even between versions, when I get feedback, I'll go back and like improve the product for the next print run. Um,
Yeah.
and I love doing that. I love being able to do that. It's super. It, every game is a constant progress, and no game is going to be perfect. I mean, heck, with my card game System Gate, I made a ton of mistakes in set one that now I just kind of have to deal with, and I'm super open of like, yo, Uranus was way too powerful in set one. I own that, and now we're just basically trying to figure out ways to sort of bring them in line with everybody else through card design, and that's been fun in its own right. But regardless, um, I believe you had some spoilers.
Yeah, let's get into some card spoilers.
I'm
Uh,
excited to see these.
yeah, so if you don't know how to play the game, I'd recommend you pause this video and go watch the how to play so that you have
Yep,
a better understanding of the things I'm about to say now. Otherwise, it might be a bit confusing.
and that is a
For the
okay.
yeah, if you don't care, you just get to look at the fun art. So the first card we're going to be talking about is Coup de Grace. It is one of the pun cards in the game. Um, a constant push and pull between me and my co-lead developer is how serious the game needs to be. Um,
No
I lean
serious.
towards I I lean towards the edge of making things fit in the setting more. But we designed this card stat wise first, and we're trying to figure out what it was. It was sort of a coup de grace card,
Hmm.
and then this name got thrown in there, and we
I
never
love
looked
it.
back. And so it
I
is a
love it.
flail. You are swinging around a giant chicken coop. It is
I
a
love
big
it. This
two-handed
is
flail.
exactly the kind of silliness that I crave. Because, see, I will say when it comes to theming and style, the two of us are like polar opposites. I like things that are goofy. I really do. If it's not silly and having fun with itself, to me, I'm like, what's the point? This is exactly the kind of card I love. Let's see,
Oh, yeah,
light to attack priority. That's actually pretty good. That's
yeah,
not bad for minus. Yeah, that's not bad.
yeah.
Heavy
So the light
stagger
attack.
one. Yo, okay. And
Yeah, so the light does two damage and resolves before the opponent's actions, which means it can deal damage and quick. It's good for finishing blows or if you're at low health. The heavy staggers one for one, which is an exact trade. And a lot of things we've noticed in playtesting is that any staggers that match the stamina costs are very strong.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
I'm not
but then
surprised.
getting the yeah, but then getting to retreat or stance change is really good for setting things up. Stance changing on another action is really great for setting up what you can do with the two-handed version. And the
Yes.
two-handed version is almost all punishes. It is,
Jeez.
if you know what your opponent is doing, you can make their life miserable.
Oh, I
The
just saw the right heavy, and I'm like,
mm,
that's a me move right there. That's funny. Burn your opponent's face up tokens. That's fantastic. I love that. Just be like, hey, I see you used your item earlier. What if you never can again? Bye. All right. See you, nerd. That's
yeah, so
I love that.
yeah, the left side is negates that are pretty useful with a charge. The right side is an attack that prevents your opponent from decreasing your stamina. And then, yeah, as you're looking at the right heavy, is one of the meanest actions in the game. If you can get it off at the end of a bout, you are stopping your opponent from challenging you. It is
That's so
a
silly.
horrible finishing blow.
That is, it's like, see, I don't even care about the other stuff. I'm just gonna use that one because that's funny. It's, yeah. Look, anything that makes my opponent suffer, I'm here for.
You should play it. You should play the Unspoken faction. They have a lot of them. They play around that a lot.
I absolutely will check them out then.
My favorite strategy with them is freeze and burn. Freeze locks opponents' tokens out
Oh, that's awesome.
into the next round, and then burn. Next card we're going to look through is the Scrapper from the
Okay.
Glittering Coast faction. This card, a lot of decks are built around it because it is
This faction's
incredibly good.
crabs.
This faction's crabs.
Dude, I
They're
love
the mecha
crabs.
crabs. Yeah. So it is a shield, one-handed, that has a pretty good defense action. Um, the second thing it's got going on is you can feed your equipment into it. For free, you get to take whatever is in your other hand and delete it in your scrapper.
Jeez.
Uh, and then gives you a free stance change. And then on the other hand, for scrapper, we have two pretty good defend actions on the left.
Yep.
Um, an attack action on the right where you're smacking someone with your shield. And then the big action on it, interrupt a light attack. And if you successfully do that, destroy the attacking equipment. You can sort of.
Wait. So the equipment doesn't come back. It's just it's gone from the game.
It is gone. It is removed from the game. That is the
What?
uh, theming of the cards I'm showing you today. The equipment I'm showing you today are things that remove resources from the game. The
What?
scrapper,
This
the
card's
scrapper,
insane, dude.
the scrapper can catch your opponent's attacks and then eat up their weapons.
Oh no. What if I eat both of my opponent's weapons?
Then they have no hands. They have nothing in their hands.
Oh no. Can
Oh
they like
no.
do I like win then?
If you eat up all four of your opponent's things, I mean, you can probably call the game there because they're not doing anything for the rest of the game.
Oh, that's
Um,
crazy.
unless they win using items, which would be great, actually. Just only having items and just psyching you out and winning. And then the X values in the cards defend and attack actions that both cost one stamina.
Oh
Um,
no.
the X is equal to the number of equipment that the card's destroyed.
That's
So
so good. That's so good, dude. This card's
it gets
so
it,
good.
it is. It's especially with the synergy of some of the stuff that's in Glittering Coast that people haven't seen yet. This card can turn the tides of any late game. Early
Oh
game,
man.
it's just a scary threat, but you go into your third or fourth round with this thing if you're playing correctly, and it's dealing 4 damage for one stamina, and your opponent has to be afraid of you just destroying their stuff.
I want this card. I want it. This card's
Uh,
sick. This Oh, that's so
if
funny. I want to eat all of my opponent's cards. I want to do
Yeah,
it.
that's the goal. And yeah, if you support the Kickstarter at the $5,000 tier, we will send you a real life scrapper to your doorstep.
That's a okay. Well, I don't have a choice now. I got to do it. You're gonna build me one of these. I need it. Well, that's happening. I'm back in the kick. I'm increasing my pledge. You don't have a choice.
That offer is exclusively for Sprobo.
Excellent. All right, last one. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take this one. Eye of Truth accessory. Your opponent plays their stratagem with one action token of their choice revealed each round. Effects cannot increase the number of tokens revealed this way. Okay, so if I understand how this works, my accessory goes down here in my accessory thing, and it's going to be like a passive ability, right?
That is correct. Yep.
And then when we're doing the stratagem, that's us playing these tokens here. Whichever
Yep,
tokens we
that is
want.
correct.
That's what that is. So what that would force my opponent to do is they'd have to show me one of their tokens, and so I'd like, oh, oh, I'm so upset that this isn't the same faction because immediately my brain was like, I can force them to show me when they're gonna go for a light, and then I can eat their toys. I'm sad it's not the same faction. That's really
Yep.
cool though.
Yeah, so Eye of Truth on its own is theoretically scary, but doesn't tend to do a whole lot because they'll just reveal their fifth action and retreat before it ever gets a chance to resolve unless you somehow lock them in. Um, the biggest thing it plays around is the wizard build in that faction interacts with revealed tokens.
Okay,
So
that's really cool.
So it's a way for your accessory to set up other actions you take because there's a lot of things that you move around revealed tokens
Wait a minute.
or
Wait a minute.
do
Wait a
special
minute.
things against revealed tokens.
Oh, once again, not the same faction.
Not the same, yeah.
I was just like, oh, face up token. I can eat it.
Well, the Betwixt main faction card, which is already revealed, it's right here down here, is you get to play with one card from outside of your faction. Oh, sorry, one equip, not accessory doesn't count. I lied. Any one card was the old version. The new version is equipment. Sadly, that's no longer doable.
Oh,
In the old
Sag.
days, you could take Eye of Truth with Coup de Grace.
That's funny. That would have been funny. That's okay. Eye of Truth still very cool. It's just my least favorite card here. These are like 10 out of 10 funny boy things. And Eye of Truth is just like, oh yeah, that's a card. I mean, Sky of Truth 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 in that order.
Yeah. And the lovely thing about this game and how it works is you can, because of the number of cards you're building around, you can definitely build cards around Scrapper enemy destruction or Coup de Grace card burns and have that be your strategy, and they can win you games.
That's awesome. I love to hear it. So, before we wrap up, I think I have one final burning question for everyone here.
Yeah.
Uh, is there an anime girl faction?
There is no anime girl faction. Um, you could be an anime girl
There
if you
you
wanted
go.
in the game.
Uh, I will say
In a
honestly, the
campaign,
fact that
just
there's
make an
no
anime girl.
anime girl faction's probably for the best.
Well, I mean, every faction can have anime girls in it. It's just that's not what faction's about.
Well, all right.
That's just people.
Absolutely. But what if I wanted to like club my opponent with an anime girl as a
Um,
weapon?
yeah, yeah. So for the $20,000 tier, I will put into print the Anime Girl Club. It will be an
Excellent.
officially sanctioned tournament legal card at the
Excellent.
20K tier.
Oh, I guess I'm spending $25,000 on this game now. Whoopsie. All right. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for telling us about the game.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You did a good job. And with that, I've been Speedrobo. You've been Jacob,
Yeah, still
and
am.
we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Yeah.